So the week comes and goes in Championship Rugby League, and as always, my mate Craig Lingard is with me to unpack another great weekend of Rugby League down in the Championship. How are you, mate? You okay?
Outstanding, mate. How are you?
Always outstanding, pal. Always outstanding. Yes, well, let's go straight in there. First of all, before we get started, we're just talking a little bit off air there. Anthony Murray moving over to the Swinton Lions in the week. This is good for Swinton in terms of what he'll bring, and probably for Paul Wood as well, just in terms of somebody to bounce off and to help out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really smart appointment by Swinton and Woody over there as well. I think with the experience that Muzz has got, historically working within groups that have not got a huge amount of budget to spend, and I think historically achieving well above what the budget allows you to do. So I think getting him in and getting his experience there with working with that young group of players that they've got at Swinton, and certainly helping Woody as well, who as a novice coach you sometimes need that little bit of help and that little bit of a welcoming shoulder or a friendly shoulder just to bounce some ideas off. And it can be tough, the situation where Woody and Swinton is in the minute. I know they've got a longer term goal of growth and development, but it can be tough, when you're getting beat week in, week out, and you're sometimes getting some big scores put on you. You've got to have that. You've got that vision. You've got to have that belief that vision is right, and you're going where you want to go. And I think having somebody like Muzz there is certainly going to be a massive boost and bonus for Swinton.
Happy days. And then, of course, rumours are abounding around a salary cap coming into Championship Rugby League with the financial difficulties that we've seen across some of the teams this season. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a sensible move. I think historically wages in the Championship have risen, and I think that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of players within Super League now dropping down to Championship and earning more money playing part-time rugby than they are doing full-time rugby, especially with the working full-time as well at the same time. So I think financially for a long time, Championship teams and the Championship as a whole has probably paid over the odds. And I think we're seeing the result of that can be an accumulation of a number of years now that the wages that people are demanding and clubs are actually paying. It's getting to a point now where we maybe need to put a cap on it. And I believe as well there's still that option there for clubs who want to spend a little bit more than the net income or the gross income, whatever it is they're working it out of, that the owners can open up a separate bank account and put a separate pot of money in there to make sure that money is guaranteed to be in there. So there's still an option and opportunity for players who want to spend a little bit more to prove that they've got the financial clout, that it's not going to get to 3 months into the season or a month off the end of the season when you realise you're not going to get to where you need to get to, and that money's not there and the players' contracts aren't going to be honoured. So, I think it's a sensible move.
And with that extra money that's put to the side, we'd expect that'll come under due diligence just to make sure that there's no mistakes there. Like I said, that money is secured, that there's no surprises coming.
Well, you're talking sensibly, mate. That doesn't always, that doesn't always compute in rugby league, does it? With the things that we've seen historically. But you would hope and you would expect that once that money's in that pot, because I guess the cynics would say that, right, well, we've put £300,000 into a separate bank account there on day one of the season to prove that we can spend X amount of money. As soon as you get authorised to spend that money, then can you take that £300,000 straight out of the bank account? That's where the due diligence needs to be, and there needs to be some sort of guarantee. Now, who controls that additional bank account? Is it the club that controls it? Is it the RFL that controls it? Is it an independent body that controls it? I'm not 100% sure. I've not really been involved in any of these conversations, so I would hope that these are the questions that are being asked and answers are being given to these questions.
Absolutely. Let's hope that common sense, that word common sense, as my old health and safety officer used to say to me, you know what they say about common sense, Dave, don't you? So what's that, mate? He said it's not common, which I thought was one of the greatest lines that I've ever heard in the workplace. It was a cracker. Right, let's get into the action on the field. And of course, Halifax have been doing it tough. They came back, which was, let's celebrate that, the fact that they were back on the field. But of course, they were up against the London Broncos. And 42-4, I think some outside observers might have thought that might have been a little bit, obviously I know that the Broncos were away, might have been a bit worse than that. But yeah, 42-4, 22-0 at half-time, the game was over. No real surprises here. With all what's been going on around Halifax, it was a pretty comfortable day at the office, wasn't it, for London?
Yeah, it was. And I think the biggest story for this is Halifax getting back out on the field, regardless of what the result is. And, I think with the disruption that they've had, and I think they only had a 17-man squad as well. So they'll have obviously done very, very limited training, if any, So to put a team together of 17 players, having not been together for 3 weeks and probably chucked together there in the last sort of 24, 48 hours, I think just to get out on the field and I guess just play as naturally as you possibly can do in that sort of situation. I think they've credited really, really well. You look at the 17 that were out on the field, it's on paper, it's a very, very good 17, but obviously you're looking at injuries and suspensions and anything else that comes on, whether these players that are on loan are going to get called back. So they need to build that strength and build that depth within the squad between now and the end of the season. But ultimately, with the points deduction that they've got, the important thing for Halifax this year is to make sure they get through, make the club sustainable and strong, and build for next season.
Absolutely, and that's I think is a great way of summing that up. Well done to London, of course, their 5th win of the season. Another team that are 5 wins this season is Widnes Vikings. Alan Coleman will be delighted with this, and interestingly, because of the the dual element, the loan element, Hunslet benefiting from quite a few loanees from Leeds, Presley Cassell, Ben Littlewood, perhaps 2 of the bigger names that went across that Super League fans will be very aware of. Littlewood went over for a try as well, which probably makes the 32-26 even more satisfying from Alan, because there was a sprinkling there of up-and-coming talent from Super League in there. I think Nicholson Watson. Watton. I think he played in this game as well. But great news is for Widnes. I mean, last year we said Widnes were a competitive side. Injuries bit at the wrong end of the season for them, but they'll be over the moon, won't they, with the way it's going thus far?
No, absolutely, yeah. Regardless of how you're winning games, if you're winning games and you're getting points on the board, we've mentioned previously that this division is going to be that close, I think, towards the end of the season, that if you can get a run on of 5, 6, 7 games on the bounce where you're putting points on the board and you're winning these games, then it gives you that little bit of a safety net. If you do have a bit of a dip for 2 or 3 weeks, that you've got them points on the board and you can sit in them positions high up the table, which is exactly what Widnes have done at the start of the season. And winning a game like that against Hunslet, who, as you mentioned there, they had them Leeds players on board. I think they had Laidlaw from Hull as well on loan, so they'd strengthened a little bit during the week. And it's a massive result, is that Hunslet are a very, very, very good team, and we played them week before and sort of scraped and scratched through that game. So any game that you can win them situations that they've got scored here or there within that game, that says a lot about your resilience of a team. And I think there were maybe a bit of a contentious decision during the game, let's say, with the disallowed try from Munster. I think they were 2 points up at the time, which would have put them a score up with a kick to come. And you're going to get them in situations, aren't you? Just hope it doesn't cost a team a game. But it obviously played a massive impact on that game for Hunslet. But that decision doesn't ultimately win Widnes the game. They've got to come back and they've got to play well and put the points on the board, which is what they did. I think looking forward for Hunslet, funnily enough, I bumped into Key Senior in Nero's car park yesterday. Had a bit of a chat about that, and he said that they've got given the opportunity to take these players from Leeds, and he just said that I think Hunslet, we could get them sort of 3 or 4 quality additions. That can be the difference between either winning a game or being close in the game or losing the game. So I think with the partnership that they can potentially develop with Leeds now, with the reserve fixtures every couple of weeks, they might get that access to more Leeds players now moving forward throughout the season. I'm sure that Hunslet will take that.
He was a player, wasn't he? Keith Senior.
Yeah, I'm glad I went opposite him. And just I know Keith from me work with the Bleak Cares as well, but he's just even now at whatever age he is, 50, whatever he is now, he's just an absolute physical specimen. He's ginormous.
I think arguably in the Super League era, one of the best centres. Yeah. Arguably, I mean, just an incredible. And I think the thing is, in terms of that Leeds golden generation, the players like Senior were overlooked for the for the flair players, but what a player! What a player Keith Senior was. I mean, what would be pleasing, Alan, was tries coming from the edges. The spine seems to be working really well for him this season as well. I think Connell out of backfield is looking the part at full back from her as well. There's a lot for Widnes to be happy about at this moment in time, and on this type of form and the way they're going about the business, they're going to be thereabouts at the end of the year, aren't they?
No, absolutely. And I think what you get when you're winning games like this as well, close games that are nip and tuck and can go either way. You start winning games that you might ordinarily lose. If you're consistently getting these victories on the board, when it comes to a close game, then you know how to win games. You've got that habit, you've got that confidence that you can find a way through. If you're losing games or you're consistently on the back end of a defeat by a score here or there, when you're in them close games again, then that confidence isn't quite there. So what Widnes are doing, they're developing the habit of winning these games, and that'll certainly stand them in good stead for any sort of close games to get in the future.
Absolutely, and congratulations to Tom Gilmore, who got the 2 points he required for 1,000 in his career thus far. Very, very well done to Tom. I'm sure he enjoyed that moment, and rightly so. Superb stuff from him. Now let's talk you. Let's talk Sheffield. Rochdale 20, Sheffield 44. And a win, unbeaten in the Championship 2026. Mr. Lingard, I keep saying that this programme is your lucky charm. On paper, 44-22, it feels a comfortable win. How did you think it went?
Yeah, we were just talking off air a little bit, weren't we, about it? I was a bit frustrated after the game initially. I thought we were a little bit sloppy in the second half, but I give credit to Rochdale. Now they kept coming at us for that last 40 minutes and made it difficult for us. I thought we started the game pretty poorly, went a little bit too lateral, but then I think as soon as we decided that we were just going to carry and go forward, then I think we were very, very, very strong against their pack, and we were making some pretty decent meters, and then we could either play through them and score. I think we had 3 middles that scored tries as well, but then scored some on the edges by creating that space. So I think what happens in part-time rugby as well is when you get one part of your game a little bit better, one part drifts off a little bit. So we've been great with our goal line defence so far during the season, but not particularly clicking with points on the board. But we scored over 40 points this week, but then conversely to that, we concede 20 points, which isn't ideal for us. Some of them tries that we conceded were sloppy, and we need to be better in them sort of areas. But that's me nitpicking. It's been. I've got to be really, really pleased with how we started the season, and to play for and win for. It's with a brand new squad, and we're still learning and developing together as a group. But it's good that we can do that, and we're winning the games at the same time as well. But I think Rochdale can take a lot out of that game as well. I spoke to Gary Thornton after the game. He was just disappointed with how they finished that first half, but really, really pleased with the resilience that they showed in the second half as well. And I think the togetherness that the team showed throughout that game as well will certainly assist them for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the balance of your side feels good. I think if your spine looks to be clicking with each game. I thought Matty, fair to say Matty Marsh's best game of the season thus far at fullback, would you say? Or getting close?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, Matt is a massive confidence player. He really is. And when Matt is happy, he's great. He had a difficult year last year with injuries, and he's still finding his way back into a little bit of form. But he's very, very critical of himself as well as Matt. And I just want him to relax a little bit more. And he knows how much we rate him as a player and how good he can be. And I think certainly scoring them 2 tries at the weekend will build that confidence, and hopefully that can be a bit of a catalyst for him to know how good he is. I think sometimes he doubts himself a little bit, and if he makes a bit of an error, then he's very, 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 very self-critical about that. So we just need him to relax and be happy, because when Marsh is happy, there's very, very few fullbacks in the division that can touch him. Yeah, no, really, really pleasing, mate. Really, I'm delighted for you. So far, so good, I think is what they would say thus far for Sheffield. But no, well done, mate. Outstanding. Doncaster 32, Gould 16. Gould going through a bit of a patch at the moment. Not quite clicking at this time. Donny 32-16. Again, 16-4 up at half time. We've said, I think we said this last week, some of these games, they're getting away, aren't they, from sides in the first half, and they're just not being able to claw it back, are they? Yeah, and that's what you're going to get this season. I know we started the season, there were some maybe strange results or surprise results and some very, very close results as well. But I think as the season progresses, the teams that have been consistently in the Championship over recent years, you would imagine that they are better adept and better equipped at handling competitive games week in, week out. The issue that you've had with League One over the years is that you might have 2, 3 or 4 teams at the top of the table that are strong for that division, but then the rest of the teams below them aren't quite as strong as they need to be. So having that consistency of tough games week in, week out isn't necessarily always there in League One. So you might get that with Gould. Let's not forget Gould is still a new team, aren't they? They're less than 2 years old. So you're going to get that inconsistency with Gould as well, where they're going to have great games one week and they're going to have poor games the week after. So let's not forget where they are in their development. But I think what you will see as the season progresses is that I'm going to stick my head on the block here, and I might be proved a little bit wrong, but I would imagine that as the season progresses and we get into sort of halfway, 75% of the way through the season, teams that have been consistently in the Championship over the last 5, 6, 7 years to a decade, they will be able to handle that physicality of a long season better than maybe the teams that are now just coming into the combined Championship from League One.
But I mean, credit to Gould, because they leveled that game up in the second half at 16-all. And it must be heartbreaking to then just see it drift away, because it did drift away from that point. Once they got level, it was like Doncaster woke up and just managed to get the job done. Corey Aston's try was critical in that period. So, like I say, even though it's another loss, there are things there that the Gould can take away from it. From a positive, we spoke a lot about this in our weekly show for the Super League. The promoted sides, they're just not going away. And that is a really good trait, isn't it? Even if you can keep turning up when the scoreboard is very much against you, that holds you in good stead down the track, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The worst thing that you can have as a coach or even as a player is that it's that feeling of, oh, here we go again. If you concede a try or you concede a couple of quick tries, and it's almost then you think, well, this could get a little bit messy. If you've got that trait, as you say, where they've got the resilience and they've got that determination, they've got that will to want to work for each other, and they're going to put the bodies on the line for 80 minutes regardless of what the scoreboard is, then you've got something to work with, And let's not forget, Doncaster on paper are an absolutely quality side. Look at some of the names that they've got, and realistically, you wouldn't expect Gould to be beating Doncaster, and that's not being disrespectful to Gould. You look at the quality of players that Doncaster have got, and as I say again, the number of years they've been in Championship and they've been competing at that level, they know what that level's about. So you would expect Doncaster to win that game. So there's loads and loads of positives that Gould can take out of that. They didn't roll over. It weren't a 60 or 70 point defeat when they were behind. They had that resilience to come back and get themselves into the game. And now their questions from that is, right, what can we do better next time? We've been in this situation now. We've shown that we've got that resilience, and we've shown we've got that ability to get back into a game against a top-class team like Doncaster. If we're in this situation again, what can we do differently next time? Or what did we do wrong now? Or what did we do wrong in that game against Doncaster that we don't need to do again? And it's all about learning them lessons. And so then when you're in that situation again, you don't make the same mistakes.
Absolutely. No, and well done to Alex Sutcliffe as well, who got his 100th career appearance in that game as well. Very well done to him. Let's talk Batley. A second win of the season for Batley. That'll put a smile on your face, Mr. Lingard. 30 points to 16 away to North Wales Crusaders. Again, a phenomenal first half performance.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't score in the second half. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it? So they were 30 points to 4 up at half time. It ends 30 points to 16. So again, from a North Wales perspective, they won the second half. At least they could go off the field knowing that whatever was said in the sheds, they did a better job in the second half. But from a Batley perspective, to be 34 up at half time, you'd have hoped that they could have kicked on from there. I mean, one of those odd second halves, really.
It is, yeah. And again, it's that how do you spin it as a coach? So for me as a coach, you've got loads and loads of positives in that first half. How we turned up professional, and we were prepared, and we were ready to play, and we set off like an house on fire, and we put 30 points on the board, and we've won the game by half time. So that's the benefit, that's a bonus that you can give your team. But then you can flip that and you can say, but what happened after that? We weren't good enough in the second half. We took us foot off the gas. We didn't maintain our standards. We didn't maintain our intensity. So we need to be better in them situations in the future, because if it's level at half time and we dish up that again in the second half against another team, and we've not got a 30-point buffer, then we're going to lose the game. So again, it's a really good narrative for a coach, is that you can have that great first half, but maybe a poor second half. I mean, I've not watched the game, so I don't know how that second half unfolded, whether North Wales was so much better in the second half and Batley didn't actually play too badly. And you've got to give credit to North Wales in that respect. But I think from a coach at that point of view, you can say, well, it's night and day. How can we go from 30 points in the first half to 0 in the second half? And what lessons can we learn? Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Greg Eden as well. Keeps going. Good. Greg Eden on the score sheet as well. Do you know what? For those people who don't know, go and do your research on Greg Eden. His tries to game ratio is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. He won't get the credit he deserves unless people like myself shout about things like that. But what a pro, what a finisher Greg Eden has been in his career. been a pleasure to watch him. Absolutely outstanding. And of course, North Wales at the moment are benefiting from that. Let's go over to Dewsbury. Dewsbury Rams 8, Barrow Raiders 20. This was a tight contest. This was a really tight, probably one of the tightest contests around, between two old-time teams. This really going toe to toe. Barrow, because they went away, will have come away from this delighted because they were in a real battle and they got the job done.
Yeah, definitely. I think we mentioned last week, didn't we, that with Dewsbury's pitch, the dimensions that it is, it's a lot smaller than what other fields are. It would have maybe restricted the sort of rugby that Barrow wanted to play. So for them to go to Dewsbury and get a victory by any margin is a real good result for them. Dewsbury started the season really strong, and I guess they've shown that resilience, that determination. They've shown they've got that fight and some quality in there as well to win games. So yeah, but Barrow will be massively pleased coming away and getting any sort of victory at Dewsbury. It's always a difficult place to go. Absolutely.
And that was a real contest right until after the hour mark as well. It was only in the last 15 minutes or so that the Raiders managed to just move away from Dewsbury. But yeah, I mean, great entertainment, brilliant game. That's what we like to see. Nice tight contests, and like I say, one of the better games of the round. Speaking though of tight contests, they don't come any closer than the draw. Midland 20. 20 all at Whitehaven, another draw. But that's the second of the season, isn't it? Which is mad, really.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Second of the season. But yeah, 20 apiece. I mean, a real slugfest, this one. Great stuff. Brilliant.
Yeah, great result for Whitehaven. From the start of the season that they had. We mentioned that they'd not picked up the points that maybe they wanted at the start of the campaign, but winning a draw in the last two games, just showing again that little bit of fight, that bit of resilience, and certainly their home form is going to be paramount for them this season to make sure they climb up the table. And will Midlands consider it a point dropped or a point gained? I don't know. I think they had a penalty goal on the hooter, didn't they, from the halfway line to try and win the game, but the kick dropped a little bit short as well. So even right down to the last kick, that game was decided.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and Midland have just been steady away, haven't they? They've had incredible results thus far, and then they've had results where you've gone, how did that happen? And now there must be something in the Cumbrian air. 2 draws this year, and both in Cumbria.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's a difficult place to go, and it's Cumbria. Like we say about Barrow going away to Dewsbury and being really pleased with any victory there. Any team that goes up to Cumbria, regardless of whether it's Whitehaven, Workington, or Barrow, because it's out of your normal. I guess your normal travel plans that you have week in, week out, or every other week in Championship when you go into Lancashire or Yorkshire or Humberside, wherever it is that you're going, and you've got that longer journey going all the way up to Cumbria, which isn't something that you do every other week. It's always difficult. We're getting the players' food right and eating right, and sat on a bus for 3.5 hours, however long it might be. It's a lot of a different prep for players, and if they can go up there and get any sort of point or any sort of victory up there, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, a tough one to swallow this though for James Newton, in the fact that they went behind 8-0, and then it was the seesaw started to kick in. Right, I think just after the hour mark, they took the lead in this one. Ended up being 2018 up, so they're in the lead. They're in a really good spot, and then of course, right, they get picked. 2020. They concede that penalty that made it all square. So I think probably the most disappointed coach would have probably been James, because they got themselves into a winning position having been behind early on.
Welcome to coaching, mate. It's a baptism of fire, isn't it? You don't want a nice, easy 50-point victory on day one of your coaching career, do you? Because you think you're going to get that all the time. And now he understands what coaching's about. So you might as well get that on day one of your coaching career, so that you're under no illusion of what's about to come. And if you want to be in this game for 10, 15, 20 years, then you're going to have something like that.
I love the fact you're not shed a tear. That's outstanding. Well, good at coaching, mate. But you know what? Again, if his start is like that, better than a loss, isn't it? I mean, I think he's got to take a bit of art from that. And most people would have put that down for a loss as well. So the fact that they've come away with something is something to build on. So I think
after the week that they had, obviously with Anthony Murray leaving, that was a massive shock. And as you say, I think maybe most people might have put that down as a victory for Midlands with what had happened during the week. And I think it was a good decision as well by Whitehaven putting putting James Newton in charge as well. Somebody who knows the club, somebody who's got the club at heart as well, and wants the club to do well. I think however long he's going to be in position, whether it's temporary till the end of the season, whether it's temporary for the next month, or whether he might get the gig permanently, I don't know. But he's certainly somebody who's got the club at heart and has got the best interest of the club at heart.
Well, we wish him well, absolutely. Swinton, 36-4 defeat to Newcastle. Again, this not a surprise, but Newcastle will be delighted to just get themselves moving forward again.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just in the process of watching this game now in prep for our game at Swinton next week, and I've just got through the first half, and it's a very, very young side that Swinton have got. There's a lot of inexperience there, a lot of players that are learning in the game, and as I mentioned earlier, that's probably one of the benefits that Swinton will have with Anthony Murray going there and teaming up with Woody. It'll be a massive help for them, and again, that's where they are in their development. It's being realistic about what's going to be achieved this year by Swinton with this young squad that they've got. It's seeing the bigger picture, and you're going to get periods during the season where you're going to get beaten. You might get 4 or 5 or 6 defeats on the bounce where you can't necessarily sometimes see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they've got to keep working towards getting that first victory. A little bit like. Oh, I just do search. My battery's going a bit. Hang on. Modern technology. We're back. We're back on. Yeah, so it's just about being realistic about where Swinton are at this moment in time. They've got to keep striving for that victory, and as we mentioned about Salford earlier on in the season, that getting that first victory would have been huge for them. And then once you've got that first one, how long is it going to be to get your second one? It's having them realistic aims and objectives, and that's where Swinton are at this moment in time. That's what we've got to concentrate on.
Well, you mentioned Salford there, who were well beaten 52-10 at Workington Town. I was disappointed with this result for the Salford fans, because when you actually look at who they had out on the field, there was quite a few loanees in this, and names that, let's be fair, people will know. Dane Sambo, Jensen Winley, of course, from Castleford. Ignatius Parsi was playing. Johnny Vaughan was in the starting lineup. Of course, we know that Brad Dwyer's there. So plenty of experience in the Salford side that went to Workington, which is fantastic for Workington. I think that when you look across the park and you see what would be stellar names in terms of their Super League careers across from you, and of course some still developing, the likes of Jansen, etc. To then go out and win 52-10 is phenomenal for Workington. But as a Salford fan, I would have expected a better showing than that.
I agree, mate. Yeah, that's when I saw that result after the game. When I was catching up on the results, I had to look twice at that one. And certainly not a result I expected. In fact, I expected Salford to maybe go up there and push them to within a score either way. And that was one of them games last week, which were a little bit on the fence with, where you couldn't really pick and choose. And as you say, with the names that Salford had put together for that game, you would have expected a little bit more. But it just goes to show that you can't just chuck names into a team. If you're and I'm just chucking this out, and I'm not saying this by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're Ignatius Parsi and you've come from St Helens, and you told, actually this week we don't want you can go and play for Salford all the way up in Workington, how much is your heart going to be in that? How much are you going to want to be doing that? It's difficult to say. And like I say, I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying that it went up there with any sort of intention of not performing or not playing, but when you're sticking a lot of people together by necessity, I guess, to a certain degree, you've got to do that. It's very, very difficult. And especially if these players are changing week on week, you're not getting that continuity, you're not getting that consistency. And we're seeing that, as I've mentioned before, Sheffield as a new squad. We're training 3 times a week together and playing together without any lone players coming in. And we're seeing it's taking us quite a long time to develop them connections and develop that understanding on the field that you can take into game days and execute them certain plays and situations in a game. If you're changing that combination week on week, and training will be minimal with these connections as well, and then you're expecting them to go into a game, and I guess expecting the class and the experience of these players just to be able to transfer onto a pitch and into a performance and into a victory. It doesn't always work, So I think longer term, Salford they'll want their own players that they can train with week in, week out and play with on a weekend. But at this moment in time, they've not got the capacity to be doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned there, I always think it's easier for a forward to transition into a new team, especially a prop. Your job's to run hard, get down the middle, and make some meters, isn't it? And hopefully get an offload here and there, which is about that cohesion, knowing that they're going to be on the shoulder. I get that, but the basics of a prop. But I think when you start to see the halfbacks coming in and out, the engine room, the spine, that as you say, combinations and time together is just so vitally important, isn't it? And that's where that's at. Yeah, let's set. So obviously London top, 10 points, 5 from 5. Widnes 5 from 6. They're doing really, really well. Then of course yourself and Barrow and Doncaster all on 8 points. You're at the foot end of that in 5th. Then it's Midland on 7. So like I say, Midland have been, as we said a moment ago, a little bit in there, but they've mustered 7 points. They're doing well. And then underneath that, on 6 points, Newcastle, Dewsbury, Rochdale, Keighley, making up the playoff positions at this moment in time. Just outside Oldham, Batley, Goole and North Wales all on 4 points. Workington, Whitehaven on 3. Hunslet, Salford on 2. Swinton yet to get on the way. And, of course, Halifax on a minus due to the ownership problems at the club. So all still to play for. Before we move on to the 1895, of course, to which you're going to be a part of, Kevin Ashcroft passed away last week. Really sad news. Great player. Didn't have the privilege, but I hear through my dad and some of my mates who did watch Kevin play. A really good quality pro. It's always sad, isn't it, when we hear the passing of these players that added so much to the game in what was for some the golden generation of rugby league.
It is, yeah, and it's can we do more as a sport to educate some of the younger spectators about the history? I think that's down to the clubs as a whole as well, to make sure media-wise they're doing that. But yeah, I think it's important that clubs recognise the involvement and the importance that these sort of people played in the sport. And I think sometimes you forget the history, don't you? You forget the history and the heritage, and you just see the here and now. And you talk. It's always difficult to compare players throughout eras, and you talk about people like Roger Millward and what would he have been like in today's era, and what would an halfback of today's era have been like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when it were a lot more physical. And it's very difficult to understand how certain players would transfer throughout the eras, because every era is completely different, So it's that's a difficult thing to do, but I think we've got to make sure that we recognise and remember these sort of players who have played a huge part, not only in the history of the game, but also in the history of the club.
100%, mate. 100%. And like I say, that's what I try and do, because we are where we are because of these people that laid the pathways. And I think the current generation, it's like my lad, my hero was Des Drummond, and even Desi, we're talking late 80s, early 90s. There's not an awful lot of footage out there of Des Drummond. Yeah. Whereas the current generation, this now, because the amount of televised games, streaming platforms, etc., the current players, they will be able to live on through generations, because there's the footage there, and good footage as well, not grainy, really good footage. It's such a shame that we haven't got as good of library of these great players that once played. We just get little snippets like the Afire try and things like that, don't we? We don't get. And it's such a shame, isn't it? Because that would make it so much easier for these players to be appreciated.
It's a massive shame, and a lot of the recollections that we get from players of a certain area are just people who've watched them and tell tales about how they watched them for years and years and years. But then people are getting older as well. Then people are dying as well. So then them stories are also disappearing. So there's a lot of players and a lot of people who have watched certain individuals that tell the stories that aren't here anymore to tell them. So the footage isn't there, and I guess you're looking at statistics, aren't you, and newspaper clippings, I guess, and just pictures and remembering certain stories that are written down in books and newspaper articles, rather than actually having the footage of these players that are playing.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Right, 1895 Cup time, preliminary round this week. Of course, got the Challenge Cup as well. 3 games, all on Sunday, 2 at 3 o'clock. The Workington Newcastle will be a 3:30 kick-off. London taking on Barrow as well as Barrow played this weekend. I mean, the statistics don't lie. London Broncos thus far this season, over 300 points already in the 4 column in 5 games, which is just ridiculous. Only 48 conceded. On paper, this is a shoo-in win for London.
On paper, but you don't win games on paper, do you? That's the old quote. And I think that Barrow will go down there and they'll they'll throw everything they've got at this. You know, Barrow won't go down there and roll over. They won't go down there and carry 5 times and kick. They'll try and put London under some pressure. You know, so I'll be interested to see how this one goes. It'd be interesting to see it the other way around, London at Barrow, and see how close it could have been there. But I think this has got the potential, depending on how Barrow start in that first 15 or 20 minutes, to keep it tight or maybe get a couple of scores to put London under pressure, because we've not seen London under any sort of pressure yet, scoreboard wise. So it'd be interesting to see if Barrow can get a couple of tries and put them under some scoreboard pressure to see where it goes. But as you said, the smart money, particularly with the game being at London and the travel and everything else that Barrow have got within that, you'd expect that London will come away with the victory.
Yeah, it's at the Richmond Athletic Ground, this, isn't it? It's not at the Cherry Records, this one. So they've moved it. And in terms of Barrow, you know, we know that Barrow raised funds for this game. So, you know, what I would say is that let's hope that Barrow put on a performance, because, you know, the nature of that, you know, it'd be such a crying shame if it was a cakewalk. And like I say, I'm like you. At the moment, London appear to have had it pretty straightforward. And I want to see them put under pressure. I want to see somebody go and really upset them and see what they're really about, because that's when we're gonna learn even more about this London Broncos side. But who knows? It could be Barrow. We wish them well. You're off to Swinton. So you're down at Swinton this week again. On paper, people will be looking at this going, "Oh yeah, it's a Sheffield win." But like you've just said, pretty much there, you'll take nothing for granted. There, you're already doing your prep. You're already doing your video work. Regardless of the fact that that Swinton have got off to a 6-0 in the loss column this year, you will be telling your lads, and I know that because we've spoke about this before, you'll be telling your lads they prepare as if they're playing London.
No, absolutely, yeah. We try and prep as good as we can for every single game and give everybody the respect that they deserve, because, as I've said before, that if you turn up to any game in this division thinking that you can just rock up and put your kit on, put your boots on, and get a victory, then you're going to get your backside spanked, and we don't want to be we don't want to be that team that gets embarrassed and in our performance. So we're prepping as professionals as we possibly can do for playing the top of the league, as we will do for playing the bottom of the league or a cup game. So that's everything that we're about. And the first time that we had anything, I guess, to contend with this year or last week, we had 3 players that were missing. Kieran Gill were out and Billy Walker were out. And we had another one out as well. I can't remember who else were out. But yeah, somebody else were out as well. So that was the first time we'd had to really deal with sort of some significant changes in our line. Connor Fitzsimmons is out for a considerable time as Connor. So that was the first time this season we've had to deal with a significant change in our squad, with 3 players coming out and 3 players coming in. And so we're still learning and developing that consistency and continuity together. So this will be the next step for us, is executing our game plan. And one of the things we've talked about previously is that we don't need to change who we are, our DNA as a team, based on who we're playing. So if we come out with the same attitude as if we're playing London, or if we're playing Swinton, or if we're playing Salford, or if we're playing Doncaster, we need to get us right first and get our way of playing right and get our execution right, regardless of who it is that we're playing. And that'll certainly be our message this week. I thought we did it for a period last week against Rochdale, maybe 25, 30 minutes during the game, but it's about extending that period now and doing it for longer.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the final game, Workington taking on Newcastle, which again, people look at it and go, should be a Newcastle win. But again, Newcastle have been, they've thrown out some odd results, let's put it that way, this season. So, it's in Cumbria. Can be a level of that.
Yeah, it can. And Workington coming off the back of that big victory against Salford that we just previously talked about. So they'll be full of confidence and they'll be putting expectations on themselves to double that performance up to this week as well. So, yeah, that's a game that could potentially go either way, depending on how the first 15, 20 minutes go. So, yeah, I don't really want to call that one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And then just changing track to the Challenge Cup, of course, a couple of Championship clubs still in the Challenge Cup. Keighley going to York. I mean, I have to say, first time I'd been to York this week, just gone. What a facility. I mean, there's so much to like about York as a club, the infrastructure, the feel of the place, the fans. There was just, it was a privilege, actually, to go and witness that for the first time. Very, very impressed with York off the field, but also on it. I mean, York, I've got so much pace in the back line. They've got real grunt in the front line. They just look a really good, solid outfit this year. Keighley will not be fancying this, I wouldn't have thought. 12 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. For Mark Applegarth, because it's the Cup, and we know that the quarter-final, I mean, no game's going to be easy in the quarter-final. You know, the betting man would have it as an all-Super League quarter-final. But there are going to be teams in there. I mean, this is the York team that have beaten FC. They've beaten KR. They very nearly. You know, they were 18-16 up against Warrington. Came flying back, having been 16-0 down. So York will know on their day they can compete. If they got a favourable, if they can get through Keighley on Saturday and get a favourable quarter-final draw, it could be that they're 80 minutes from Wembley. I mean, this is for me, it's a real opportunity, this, for Mark Applegarth and York.
No, it's massive, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what team Mark actually selects, whether he goes full strength to keep that consistency and continuity and get them hopefully posting some points on the board for York, or whether he use the opportunity to rest a few people, which then, let's not forget, that could then have a knock-on effect of Newcastle, who they can select up at Workington. That might weaken the Newcastle squad if Mark decides to rotate people around and give people a week off. So it'll be interesting to see what team that he selects. But I think going back to the ground that you mentioned there at York, I think it's an absolutely brilliant facility. And I think when we're talking about rugby league stadium, I think that is an absolute brilliant rugby league stadium, because it gives you that opportunity to get a big crowd in there, but it also gives you an opportunity to expand as well, as and when you outgrow the current capacity that you need. You know, I think you can get I think is it 7,500, whatever it is, the capacity there round about that. And if you fill it, it'll feel like Wembley. You know, the noise there, it'll be great, rather than having 5,000, 7,500 people in the 30,000 seat stadium where that noise disappears. I think that's the perfect stadium for a developing rugby league club.
Absolutely, man. You know, the infrastructure, the surroundings, the park and ride, everything about it, just really, really good. I mean, I've not heard anything. I mean, there was talk of Sheffield, wasn't there, having something similar. Where's that up to?
Yeah, that's still in the planning phase. So they're looking at where we'll be moving shortly to ground share with Sheffield FC. I think we'll be there for a couple of years, I think, until the new ground that Sheffield are going to get is built and developed. So it's going to be a joint facility for Sheffield Eagles and Sheffield FC in Sheffield. So I think they're just at the minute finalising the site where that's going to be built on. So I think there's, as always happens with councils and planning and all that sort of stuff, it's the red tape that just keeps getting a little bit longer and longer and longer. But yeah, I think hopefully they're looking at once they get authorization to start that, you're probably looking at a couple of years for us to be playing in that new stadium.
Yeah, I was impressed with the plans. You know, when the plans were launched on that. Again, looks a really good facility for Championship Rugby League, with, as you say, that opportunity to grow and to build. So, yeah, you know, we wish Sheffield well with that. But yeah, like I say, York, what a blueprint! Absolutely brilliant. You would expect York to come through, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And of course, Gould going up against Wire. We'd expect Warrington to go through that as well. For those who are Gould Viking supporters who are not going to be at the game, yours truly and my Super League Raw partner in crime, Reggie, we will be doing commentary on that game for rugbyleague.com this coming Saturday from 2 o'clock. So if you can't get to the game and you're wondering where you can listen to that game, go over to rugbyleague.com and you'll be hearing my dulcet tones alongside Greg calling the action. Gould Vikings against Warrington Wolves this coming Saturday. Well, there you go. Another Championship Rugby League with Mr. Lingard has come and has gone. As always, mate, we wish
you missed the game.
Did I? Which one?
Oldham Catalan.
My apologies, I did miss Oldham Catalan. That's on me. I do apologise. Catalan Oldham, before we go. Catalan Oldham. Do you know what? I mean, on this, Catalans for me, we were talking on Weekly last night with regards to this. And game one, Huddersfield, the spine looked something like, you know, Sexton, Dodd. I think Dodd has come back a different player. I mean, we said this last night that, you know, he seems to be taking the line on a lot more than he did when he was at Saints. So even though he didn't get much game time in the NRL, I think his game smarts have improved. I think there's no doubt about that. Charlie Staines as well at fullback. Then it went off. And then against Lee, it was back again. And it's, you know, it's Catalan are a really interesting side. A lot of changes this year. they will want to put on a good performance at home. I think that their fans are crying out for it. I just can't see Oldham coming through this with the travel and all the rest of it. It's a poison chalice, really, isn't it? For a Championship club
it's the worst possible draw that you can get for a club. And you're going all the way over to Catalan, and again, you potentially on a hide into nothing, aren't you? You'd expect the Catalans will be way too strong. And I would imagine as well, I know we had that conversation earlier about will York play a full strength side? I think Catalan will. I think because they're still in that development stage, they're still in that inconsistent stage about their performances. So I think they'll be looking at this as a real good opportunity to put some combinations together, to put some points on the board and learn a little bit more about each other in a game that's not a Super League game. So I would expect them to go full strength against Oldham and try and put some sort of statement out there that they're developing and they can get a little bit more consistent. Because like you had, I thought started pretty well, and then the performance against Bradford I thought were one of the worst performances I've seen from a team in Super League for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to take positives out, I mean, we'd expect all three Championship clubs to bow out this weekend, and that's not being disrespectful. But in terms of from a York Knights and a Catalan perspective, and Warrington to a degree, I think Warrington will make a few changes. Like I say, I'd expect. We were speaking before we went on. I think Ewan Smith might get a game for Warrington. A couple of the fringe players, maybe Ewan Irwin might get a game over George Williams. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ewan get 80 minutes in this. But we'd expect these Championship clubs to bow out. From a Warrington, certainly from a Catalan and York perspective, the draws are good in the fact that this is a game where competitively they can just look again at their attacking structures and just cement the combinations. And, because training's training, even though we'd expect maybe Catalan and York to put a decent win together against their Championship opposition, it's still competitive. It's not a training session. Yeah. It's a higher intensity, which makes it click a bit better, doesn't it, when they get back to Super League?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, it's not you don't want to be disrespectful and say it's a competitive training session, because it's not.
Correct.
But you would expect with the intensity of the game and the fitness and the strength of the full-time players that the Championship teams might be able to give you a real good 40 or 50 minutes, but eventually you expect that the quality of the players and the strength and the additional fitness will take its toll, especially for some maybe for Oldham with the travel that they've got going over to Catalan as well. So you would expect that the Super League teams would be too strong, and they'll be looking at, I guess, from a coach's point of view, that message will be how professional can we be. We're not going to go out there and go coast to coast from minute one. We need to go through that process of this is how we win games, this is how we get into a game, this is how we put a team under pressure. Once we put a team under pressure, can we be clinical in our execution, scoring tries? So that there'll be all the pointers that the coaches have to look at.
Yeah, and of course you've been there. I mean, so we'll close on this because Oldham, Keighley, and dear me, and Gould. You've been there. You went to the HJ in round 3 and attribute yourself really well as a coach of Sheffield Eagles. What were from your perspective? What were the takeouts from that experience of going up against Warrington that you've been able to take on with you into the games that have followed that in the Championship?
It was the resilience. Defensively resilience. We knew we were going to get put under a lot of pressure, defending our goal line, defending coming out of yardage, and we knew we were going to be tested. And I think for us, we stood up pretty well defensively, and we saw that when we went 10 points down, we didn't capitulate. We actually got back into the game, and we came back and we scored the next try, got the next points. So we showed not only resilience defensively, but we showed a bit of game smarts and resilience with ball in hand as well. But then what you also do is you highlight the things that the opposition do really well. So when Warrington got a quick ruck against us, they doubled it up with another direct quick ruck and doubled it up with another one. So before you know it, you've had one quick ruck in the opposition 20-metre area, but then 3 plays later you defend your goal line. Yeah. So you're highlighting the real good, classy execution stuff that the opposition have done, and can we replicate that, or how good can we get in our division to make sure that we're doing something similar? So you're trying to take the positives out of your own performance, but also looking at where you can sort of steal little wins from the opposition as well, because you know yourself as a player. You can say the message you can give to players is that how difficult was that to defend? Well, why was it difficult to defend? Well, because they did X, Y, Z. And the players are working that out themselves. They understand it because of being in that washing machine. They've been in that situation where one quick ruck can lead to 2, 3, 4, and you stood behind the sticks conceding a try. So it's getting that understanding of the longer term rather than scoring a play on that one play. It might be you've done something to benefit your teammates for the next play, and you might actually score three or four plays later, not on that individual moment. So it's understanding the patience and the process that it takes to make sure that you end your set really well, or if you don't do a certain thing, this is the outcome of you not doing what you were needed to do, and it might be a negative outcome. Just little ones that you can try and take.
Yeah, great insight. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? But you talk about ruck speed and all that momentum of 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 meters, and suddenly you're in the red zone. And I think it's that choice, isn't it? Because you have a choice when you're attacking. You can use it to have a breather, or you can remain switched on, looking for, hang on, we've got quick ruck speed here, we're on the front foot. And it's about being switched on. And the best way to get a breather in rugby league is to be the attacking side and controlling the game. So those moments that you're describing there, absolutely, great insight in terms of what you can take away from a game when you're experiencing those type of plays. Brilliant stuff, mate. Now, I must ask, is there anything else I've missed, Craig?
I don't think so, mate. No, I think we've covered everything now. Covered every game so far.
You can rest easy. You can go back to your sprinting prep. Outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been another fantastic chat on rugby league football in the Championship. Get yourself to a game this weekend. If your team isn't playing, of course, there'll be a lot of Championship sides this weekend that aren't playing. Maybe get yourself over to one of those 1895 Cup games. We do know. I know that it was either Whitehaven or Workington that came out this week and said that they really need people through the turnstiles. So again, I know it's the enemy, Whitehaven, but come on, get yourselves over to Workington, go and support Cumbrian Rugby League, and try and get yourself to a couple of these games. And if you can't, if you can't get to Cumbria, but you've got a Challenge Cup game in and around your local area, go and watch that, because there's nothing like being in a stadium with the rugby league family watching the greatest sport on earth. From myself and from Craig, we'll be back next week, 7 p.m. YouTube for more Championship Rugby League with Craig Lingard. Craig, thanks for your company, mate. See you soon.
My pleasure, mate.
All the best.